for our concerns and here in Mendocino County. And I haven't gotten a clear indication as to whether Mr. Thompson is aware of this or the extent to which his representatives have moved him to take action with regard to it. But I think it's, I agree with almost everything that Richard has presented us here with, and John McGowan and I were talking about this the last couple of days, trying to figure out where we get a handle on it. The handle is very slippery and seems to be moving around and about. So in that regard, I think we have two things we have to request from the CEO's office. One is you contact the appropriate agency and put in our expression of concern. Secondly, get to Mr. Thompson and perhaps some of the other Northern California delegation, send copies of that letter to other members of the California delegation. This is a serious matter. When you look into it and look at the history of it, it is quite ominous. And one of the things that comments has been made, once it's in, it doesn't go away. And that's the part of it here, that even though it's touching Northern California, its impacts on our county, our coast, will be substantial. There's no question about that.
I don't feel that we should not be involved in this, but as Mr. Johnson brought out, this is an issue that affects the Washington, Oregon, and California coast. That involves 6 United States senators and numerous congressmen at the federal level. I think that they should be taking the lead on this and the concerns. As far as my personal feelings, I'm not so sure that, you know, it depends on what this letter is proposed going to say. I'm not so sure it's in the best interest of America, where first of all of our military operations are the information of the world out there. You know, I think there has to be some operations and some training missions that we keep in total secrecy. So, and I don't know the details of all of what these trainings and operations are, but I just have a real problem with, you know, what would have been in World War II after the Japanese attacked us on Pearl Harbor if we had to fill out an environmental statement because we was going to attack the Japanese in the Pacific Islands. You know, how long a process would that taken? So I'm not so sure that this is the proper process. I don't know, you know, yes, there's environmental concerns and they need to be aware of that. I would support a letter to that. But to come out and say that we're opposed to military operations off of our coastlines, I think is a far stretch from that. So I would be, if I'm going to sign a letter, I wouldn't support something that just says we're totally opposed to any operations. I would support a letter that said we have concerns. But getting back to the fact, you know, if this doesn't raise the eyebrows of 6 of our United States senators that affect the Washington, California, Oregon coast, and how many numerous congressmen, you know, they're the ones that should be taking the lead on this, not the, you know, we talk about reduced staffing and days off. How much do we ask our limited staff and getting less staff all the time to do on these different issues? I mean, you know, if this is a federal issue, then let our federal delegates take care of it. Supervisor McCown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it is a little surprising to me that there isn't more public awareness of this, but it's, you know, I think we're in an age of information overload. So if they had given us the 10-page summary of what this really meant, it might look a lot more ominous than the 1,000 pages of bury them with detail, because it has been a challenge to wade through the information and get at what are the real potential impacts of this. And I don't think anyone is advocating to reduce the existing training grounds, which are, you know, securely in place. The concern is about the expansion to additional areas, and I am very concerned about that. And I do support direction to the executive office to draft a letter of concern based on their further review of the information. And I think it's appropriate to then have that letter be to the approval of two of the supervisors, and I certainly think at least one of them should be a coastal supervisor. I would defer to it being both of the coastal supervisors or one of the coastal supervisors and the chair. I'm not attached to that. I think what we need to do is go on record with our concerns.
Supervisor Smith, we need to move this. Supervisor Koufax?
Well,
We just need to move this along.
yeah, I know. My only point here would, we need to make 2 points, really. One is that the timeline on this has been very, very short. The other part of it here is the information has not been out there. There's a real question as to how much public awareness there is of this particular move. That's all we need to put forward here. The concerns that go beyond this, we can argue about one way or the other, but I think it's entirely appropriate for the county to be responsive. This is not a federal issue. This is a public issue. And to leave it to our federal officials to take care of it, they can make the same argument. They're worried about an economy that's is totally tanked. And so therefore they can't be bothered with what the Navy's doing this month or next month. But so that argument just doesn't carry any weight with me, at least. We have a list in some of this material that has been made available to us, saying here are the elected representatives in California who have done nothing to protect the Pacific Ocean along the California coast from the Navy warfare weapons testing proposal. And there are a good many of otherwise responsive individuals who need to hear what we have to say. So I'd be happy to serve on the committee and make sure that what goes forward is reasonable and ideologically as neutral as we can make it.
Would you put that in the form of a motion, Supervisor?
That's so moved.
Second.
Motion, Supervisor Smith?
Yes, comment on that. I would support that. I believe that it ought to be a specific letter of concern, of strong concern to the Navy, whatever the protocols or the procedures are for entering that response. I believe it should have a cover letter to our elected officials, basically stating, attached, you will find our letter, our formal comments to the U.S. Navy weapons testing program, and we are asking for you as our elected federal representatives and state elected officials to take the lead on something that we feel has great significance to the citizens in the state of California. And I would propose that it ought to have that. That's how it should be done. That would be the most professional and appropriate way, I think, is to have our formal comments written in that letter, then the cover letter stating that we are asking our elected officials that they step up and that they step forward and weigh in on this important issue. And I would like to ask that the two individuals to review the content of those letters, which needs to occur in the next 2 days. It needs to go out by the 11th, would be Supervisor McCowan and Supervisor Koufax.
That's part of the motion. Supervisor Koufax, you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comment? Anybody comment?
Just a brief.
Just briefly.
Yeah.
State your name, please.
The media and everybody here, including the supervisors, should write down the URL of the EIS. And it's Northwest Training is NWT. Write it down. NWT, Range, Complex, EIS.com. And I'll be here to repeat it later. Anybody wants to know. And I wanted to let you know that the coastal delegations, congressional delegations of Oregon and Washington have called for an extension of the public comment deadline to April 11th. And I would recommend that a specific date be added to that letter, to the extension of public comment and a hearing to be held here in Mendocino County, specific things to ask for.
CEO's got those comments included. Okay, with that, can we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried unanimous. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 6A, we got a couple more, and we're going to move into the budget process here. We're going to try to